Hello and thank you for purchasing the newsletter Signup Shopify section by qwiqode. In this video, I'll be showing you how to use it. With this section, you can add a subscribe form along with custom text and custom media. To get started, let's go to the section media block to add an image to the section. And from here, you can add an image from your library. So maybe we can add something like this. Okay, and then we have multiple styling options, and the first one is media position. And from here, you can select the image to be on the left or on the right. For this example, I'm gonna leave it on left. Next, we have media dimensions, and by default, the image is original, but you can select other sizes like landscape, portrait, or square. So if you select those, it will look like this, okay? But for this example, I'm gonna leave it as landscape, which is the original image size. Next, we have the media height, and by default is auto, so that means that this height will be determined by the size of the media dimensions, okay? For example, if we choose portrait, it will be this tall, okay? But if you select full, that means that the image will be 100% height of the other column where we have the text. So this will override this size over here, okay? But for this example, I'm gonna leave it as auto and put back landscape like this. Next, we have the media width, and by default is 50%, but you can adjust this to make your image bigger or smaller, okay? But on this example, I'm gonna keep it at 50 because I like that half and half layout. Next, we have the media border radius, and with this, you control the corners of your media element. So right now it's 0, but if you increment this, you see those curves around the edges of the media, okay? But for this example, I'm gonna leave it as 0. Next, we have the media margin from text, which is this distance over here. So by default, it's 30 pixels, but you can increment this distance, but maybe that's too much. I'm gonna keep it around 40, it looks fine for me. Next, we have the same styling settings for mobile, and the first option is the media width. So with this, you can control the size of the image. Okay, but for now, I'm gonna keep it at 100. And then we have the media position. So by default it's top, but you can also select it to be at the bottom. Okay, but for now, I'm gonna keep it at top. And at the end, we have the media margin from text. So you can adjust that distance. I'll keep it like this. Okay, let's go back to desktop. Now with the image added, let's go to the section settings to add more content. And in here we have multiple options for content, and the first one is subtitle. So in here we can add something like this, and then on section title we can add something like that, and then on text block I have something on my clipboard, so I'm gonna paste it like this. Okay, these three fields are rich text, so that means that you can change the wrapping of the element. For example, the section title by default is H2, but you can also select it to be H1 or any other from this list. Okay, but for now, I'm gonna keep it as H2. You can also select certain words and style them. For example, can italic or add links to certain words or to the whole wrapper. Okay, but for now, I'm gonna remove both of these. Next, we have the newsletter settings, and the first one is to show name on the form like this. So you can have it enabled like this or hide it, so you can use only the email. But for this example, I'm gonna use the name because I want to keep both of them. Next, we have the labels, and the first one is the name label. So you can add your own. So for example, you can add something like your name, okay? And the placeholder is the text inside the input. So once you add your name in here, that's gone, but you have that placeholder. So you can add here your own placeholder, like please enter your name, okay? And you have the same for the email. So you can put just email like this or your email, and on placeholder, we can add something like please enter your email like that. Next, we have the button label, which is this one right here. So maybe you can add something like subscribe. Next, we have the form styling, and the first option is the fields layout. So right now they're stacked, but you can also select it to be inline or inline with a full width button like this, or stack like that, or stack with the full width button like this. Okay, but for this example, I'm gonna keep it like that. Next, we have the button alignment, and by default it's left, but you can also select it to be center or right, but let's keep it left. Next, we have an option for display either the label or placeholder or both. So by default, we're showing both, but you can also select it to be only the label or only the placeholder, okay? But for now, I'm gonna keep both of them. Next, we have the form max width. So right now it's 100%, but you can also select it to be less than that, like this. Next, we have the top and bottom margin. So this is the outside distance of the form. So right now it's 20 pixels, but you can increment this to make more room around here. The same at the bottom. So you can push the form, but for now, I'm gonna keep them both at 20 pixels. Next, we have the gap between form fields. So right now it's 20 pixels, but you can adjust this to make them closer or have more space between them. Okay, but for now I'm gonna keep it at 20. Next we have the same styling settings for mobile, the fields layout, inline with full width, stack and stack with full width, okay, max width, margin top, margin bottom, and the gap between the fields. Next we have the section styling, and by default this section is full width with a content max width of 1280. So if we add a background color to the section using this field and we expand this, you'll see that the section expands all the way, but the content stays on that 1280. Okay, but you also have an option for enable the real full width, and when this is enabled, this is ignored. So you'll see that it's expanding all the way across the screen. Okay, so that's for full width, but you can also select it to be regular, and when using regular, this content max width is the full width of the section. So you'll see that it's not expanding. Okay, but for this example, I'm gonna keep it with full width with that content max width because I really like this look. Next we have the section border radius, and with this you can control the corners of the section. So if you increment this, you see those curves around the edges. Okay, but for now I'm gonna keep it 0. Next we have the section top, bottom, and horizontal margins. For top and bottom is the outside distance. Okay, so if you increment this, you make more room on the outside of the section. Okay, and the section horizontal margin, this is only available when using regular width. So for example, if I put this, okay, and let's say I'm using regular width, but the section is very wide, like this. Okay, if you don't have an horizontal margin, it will look on smaller screens like it's a full width section without any margins in here. Okay, but if you adjust this, you'll see that we're making room outside the section horizontally. Okay, so that's only available when using regular width, because on full width the section always expands all the way. Okay, so you have that option, but for now we can ignore it because I'm gonna use full width. Next we have the section top, bottom, and horizontal padding, and while the margin is the outside distance, the padding is the inside distance. So right now it's 20 pixels, but if you add more, you make more room inside the section. Okay, the same with the bottom. So maybe we can add something like this. I'll make all this room over here. The same with the horizontal padding. So this distance is this over here. So you can increment this to make more room on the inside, or select it to be 0 so it touches the edges. Okay, but for now I'm gonna keep it around 20. Next we have the same styling settings for mobile. You have the top and bottom margin and the horizontal margin, and also the top, bottom, and horizontal paddings. Next we have the input styling, and the first option is to use custom font. So when this is enabled, you can select a font from this list to be applied to those inputs. For example, we can add something like that. Next, we have the custom font family name, and this is in case you're loading a custom font or your theme. Let's say you're loading a Helvetica, you can add here that font name to be applied to the inputs. Okay, but for now, I'm gonna keep it blank because I want to use this font over here. Next, we have the font weight. Okay, so with this, you can control how bold the font looks. So you can have it thin or you can have it bold. But for now, I'm gonna keep it as default. Next, we have the colors for the input, and the first option is the background color. So with this, you can control the inside of those fields. So we can add maybe a light gray like this. Next, you have the text color. So this is when you add a name in here. So you can change that color inside the input. Next, we have the placeholder color. And this is for the text that appears before you add your content. It's the color of this font. So you can change it to any color that you like. But maybe for now, I'm gonna keep it as a darker gray like this. Next, we have the border color. And with this, you can control the color of these edges. So you can add your own color like that. But for now, I'm gonna keep it like this. Next, we have an option for enabling the drop shadow on focus. So that means when you click on the field to add your name, you see that box shadow effect. So you can turn that on or off. Next, we have the focus border color. So in case you want to highlight it when selected, you can add a color in here. So you see that highlight color, okay? Next, we have the text styling settings, and all of these are 0 because when using 0 is the default from your theme, okay? But if you increment this, you use this custom font size. For example, we can make it a little bigger, so we can have it like this. Next, we have the line height, and that's the vertical distance between the characters. But in this case, because it's only one line, we won't see it, so we can ignore it for now. Next, we have the input letter spacing, and with this, we control the distance, but the horizontal distance between the characters. Okay, so you can adjust that distance. But for now, I'm gonna keep it at 0. Next, we have the input border radius, and with this, you control the corners of the input fields. Okay, so maybe we can add something like that. Next, we have the input border width. Okay, so with this, you can control the thickness of those fields. Okay, so maybe that's too much. I'm gonna keep it around 2. Next, we have an option to only show the bottom border. So when this is enabled, you only see the bottom like this. So you won't see any of these colors. So it's only the bottom border. Okay, but on this example, I'm gonna disable it because I want to look like that. Okay, next we have the same styling settings for mobile, the font size, line height, letter spacing, border radius, and border width. Next we have the label styling, and the first option is the label position. So by default it's on top, but you can also select it to be on the left like this. Next you have the vertical alignment, and this is only available when left is selected on the label position. So you can adjust this to be at the top, center, or bottom. So maybe right now we have a label that is too big, so we can add something like this and email to be just email like this, and we go back, you see that alignment. So right now it's at the bottom, center, or top, but for now I'm gonna leave it at center. Next we have the label color, so you can add a custom color. Okay, next you have the label width, and this is only available when using it at the left like this. So we can increment this size and also increment the distance from the input. So you can adjust this margin. For example, if the label width is small like this and it's touching right here, you can adjust that margin using this other field. But maybe for now I'm gonna keep it around 70 like this. Okay, next we have the text styling settings, so you can use a custom font in here. Maybe we can add something like this, maybe a font size a little bigger. And actually I think I like better to have the label position to be at the top like that. Okay, next we have the line height and the letter spacing, so you can have more space between the characters, but for now I'm gonna keep it at 0. Next we have the same styling settings for mobile. You have the label width, margin from input, font size, line height, and letter spacing. Next we have the section text area styling, and the first option is the vertical alignment. So right now by default is center, but you can also select it to be at the top or at the bottom. Okay, so maybe we won't see it right now because the image is not that tall, but let's say you have a taller image like this, you can adjust the position of this text, so to be at the top, center, or bottom. But I'm gonna put this back to landscape and this to be center like this. Next we have the text alignment, and by default it's left, but you can also have it center or to the right like this. And we also have the text alignment option for mobile. Okay, next we have the styling for the other text elements, and the first one is the subtitle styling. So maybe on color we can add a highlight like this and use a custom font like that. Okay, and maybe on font size we can have it a little bigger and actually a little more bold like this. Okay, and along with the text styling you also have the top and bottom margin, so that's the outside distance. If we put this 0, you see that it's closer to the edge, and maybe we can add a little more room at the bottom. Next we have the same styling settings for mobile, top and bottom margin, font size, line height, and letter spacing. Next we have the title styling, and maybe on the title we can add a highlight color like this and change the font like that and make it way bigger like this. Okay, and actually I think there's too much space, so I'm gonna make them closer, reducing the bottom margin of the subtitle. Next we have the same styling settings for mobile, top and bottom margin, font size, line height, and letter spacing. And down here we have the text block styling. Maybe we can add a color to it and make the font size a little bigger. Okay, and now we can see the line height, so we have multiple lines. So if we adjust this, you'll see that we're updating the vertical space between them like this, but maybe that's too much. I'm gonna keep it like that. Okay, and maybe we can add more room at the bottom like this. Next we have the same for mobile, top and bottom margin, font size, line height, and letter spacing. Next we have the button styling, and the first option is the custom width. So right now it's 140, but if you leave this blank, this width will be automatic. Okay, so maybe we can add something like that, like 300, so it will be way bigger. But for now I'm gonna leave it blank because I want the width to be automatic. Next we have the margin top and the margin bottom, so you can adjust this. Next we have the horizontal and vertical padding, and this is the inside distance of the button. So maybe we can make more room inside the button like this, and also with the vertical padding like that. And then we can change the font like this, and maybe the font size we can make it way bigger like this. Okay, next we have the same for mobile, the custom width, margins, paddings, and the font size. Okay, and down here we have the border options, and the first one is the border radius, so you can adjust this to control the corners of the button. Next we have a border width, and right now it's 0, so we don't see a border around the button, but if you adjust this, you see that border. Next, we have the button colors, and the first option is the text color. So we can adjust this, maybe something like that. Next, we have the background color. So maybe we can change it to something like this, and also the border color. But this is only available if you added a border width. Okay, so on this example, we can ignore it because I'm gonna use it like this without any borders. Next, we have the button hover colors. These are the colors when a user puts the mouse over the button. Okay, so maybe on hover, we can have a different color like this. But actually, I like a darker color like that. So you have the text, background, and border colors on hover. And next, we have the confirmation message settings. And the first option is to preview it. So if you enable this, you see this message right here. And this message, you can change it. So you can add something like that. Okay, and then you have the text styling settings for that message. So you can change the color, use a custom font, change the font size. Maybe we can do something like this. And you can also change the line height and letter spacing. And down here we have the same styling settings for mobile. So you have font size, line height, and letter spacing. Okay, so with these settings, you can customize this message. So I'm gonna turn this off to see it like that. Okay, so I'm gonna make a final adjustment because the image, I think it will look better if it's 100% like this. Okay, and maybe there's too much space between the form and the text. So I'm gonna adjust that. Okay, and the fields layout, I think it will look better stacked with full width button like this. Okay, so I really like how it looks. So I'm gonna save it, and that's it. Thank you again, and if you have any questions or if you run into any issues, please don't hesitate to contact us via the support page on our website. Thank you again, and take care.